that first Christmas, and I've talked about it a lot, I get kind of frustrated when people start talking about the myths surrounding the Christmas story. And I recently had a Bible study on our Wednesday night gathering where I sort of debunked some of the traditional stories, like for instance that Joseph and Mary were walking through the dark on that final Christmas day, and she was riding on the back of a donkey, and the light of the star was shining above them as they're wandering through the desert, and they show up in the middle of the night, and there's an innkeeper, and he feels sad, and all the other inns are full, and he doesn't know what to do, and he kind of wants to help the couple, but his wife is a little bit of a harpy and sort of an evil woman, and she's firm and adamant there's no room, and the innkeeper just looks sad and says, I don't have any room. But as they're walking away, he hustles out of his busy and filled inn and says, oh, but I have a barn, please, you can come stay here. um that's there. First of all, it's not biblical. um uh just so you know, there, and I don't care what anybody says, there was no inn in Bethlehem. Bethlehem was a tiny little village that did not have the resources or the population or the people coming through to support a hotel, motel, inn construct. It's not the word that Luke uses in his gospel. It's a completely different word. It's the word katalima, which means spare room everywhere else. And it never says in the Gospel of Luke that they showed up last minute just as the water was breaking and her body was about to basically give birth. In fact, just says just the opposite. It says while they were there, the time came. So they're already there. It was a present tense there. And while they were there, they gave birth. And, without a doubt, Mary gave birth among friends and family, and the men were kicked out of the house, and the women were gathered around her. She wasn't alone. She wasn't struggling as a young teenage mother to give birth all by herself in a time of sadness and darkness. But I can tell you this: it wasn't shiny. It wasn't a Hallmark moment. There was no a little drummer boy that shows up. I'm fairly positive, though, that there was evening that happened because, after the birth took place, and however long, we don't know exactly how much time passed between when Jesus made his entrance into flesh and blood outside of the womb, then was wrapped in the swaddling clothes, and then laid in the feed trough, which would have been inside a house where the animals were kept. Shepherds, they were still the lowest rung of society in that day and age. They were people of the earth. They were not welcome in the temple, and they were not looked upon very highly, even though David, the greatest king of Israel, was a shepherd king. Still, they just didn't look very highly on them. But even in their lowly status, those shepherds that came and saw the baby would never have left Mary and Joseph if they didn't have a place to stay, if the baby wasn't being cared for, because hospitality in that culture was like the hallmark of who they were. And there's no way that those shepherds would leave the presence of Jesus and Mary, even if it wasn't the Messiah, just a newly birthed child, and the young mother and young father. There's no way they would have left them in a state where they weren't being as comfortable and cared for. If they weren't in a house surrounded by family and friends, they would have said, please come home to our house. We will take care of you. So you got to know that's part of the story. But even that is just an essence of what hope is. Joy to the world today, this day, in a city of Bethlehem, born unto you a Savior. Hope made manifest. The Messiah has come. The beauty of the Christmas story is right there in the middle of their mess, in the middle of their world. That long night has passed, and suddenly the light of the Messiah is shining on them. This is what hope is all about.